meeting is called to order. And Mike, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start, as we always do, with the review of minutes from previous meetings, beginning with the work session on September 24, 2012.
I move that we approve the work session minutes as written.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Charlie, seconded by Ray. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those minutes are approved. Moving on to the September 24, 2012 regular Select Board meeting.
I move to approve them as written.
Second.
It's been moved by Mike and seconded by Charlie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those minutes are approved. And finally, the non-public September 24, 2012 meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Dick and seconded by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those minutes are approved. Announcements. The Select Board will meet on the following dates. Regular meetings at 6 p.m. on Monday, October 22, 2012, and Tuesday, November 13, 2012. Work review sessions prior to the regular meeting will start at 5 p.m. There will be a meeting to discuss the Town of Plymouth's 250th anniversary celebration on Monday, October 15, 2012, at 6 p.m., and that meeting will be here in the Town Hall. All those interested in having a part in our 250th anniversary celebration are welcome to attend, and bring your ideas, please. All of these meetings will be held in the Town Hall unless otherwise posted. I have a few other announcements, two from the library. We have an invitation to the public from the library to join the library to meet and welcome Rebecca Maytek, the new library director, and Tanya Robbins, youth services librarian. This will be on Wednesday, October 17, 2012, from 3 to 5 p.m. in the Young Ladies Library Association Community Room on the lower level of the library. And this is being hosted by the staff and trustees of the Pease Public Library and the Young Ladies Library Association. The library is also sponsoring an autumn lecture series called Healthy Living. This is going to be a series of Thursday lectures at the library, Thursday evenings from 4 to 6. With a variety of subjects, and if people are interested, I recommend that you go to the library's website and get more information about that. Moving on, we've also been asked to announce a program that will be taking place at Plymouth State University, sponsored by the No Northern Pass Coalition and Common Ground Environmental and Social Justice Student Organization of PSU. And to summarize, New Hampshire is currently considering large reservoir hydroelectricity from Hydro-Quebec and other Canadian sources as a renewable energy option. Is industrial-size hydro real green energy? How does large hydro impact the environment? Should large hydro be a part of New Hampshire's renewable energy portfolio? You are invited to hear John Bennett, Executive Director of the Sierra Club Canada, speak about large hydroelectricity in a presentation entitled Real Green Energy. This will be at Plymouth State University in the Hartman Union Building, 17 High Street in Plymouth, Tuesday, October 23rd, 2012 at 7 p.m. There will also be an open house at the Pemmy Youth Center, and that will be, let me find the date on that one, on October 18 from 4 to 5:30 p.m. The Pemmy Youth Center, as I think everyone knows, is at 111 Main Street in Plymouth. And we're invited to come and see how the local youth center is serving our youth. And finally, there are a couple of events that are taking place leading up to the November election. The first will be in Plymouth on Wednesday, October 10th, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the Pease Public Library. At this event, the Democratic candidates for state legislature from Plymouth, that includes State Senate District 2 and State House District 8, will hold a forum for voters, and Pete Carey of Hebron will moderate the event. Those in attendance will be Bob Lamb, Representative Suzanne Smith, and Mary Cooney, and we will also have Sid Lovett, the third candidate for our newly delineated district. Voters will be able to ask questions of the candidates during the event, and all members of the public are invited to attend. And finally, in Hebron, there will be a Meet the Candidates night at the Hebron Union Church Community Hall, Monday, October 15 at 7 p.m., with reception and refreshments starting at 6:30. To read this invitation, please join us for Meet the Candidates night at the Community Hall in Hebron. This event is an opportunity for Hebron and other area voters to meet some of the candidates of both parties, to hear what they have to say about some of the important issues facing us all. The moderator of this event will be the Reverend John Fisher. Invited candidates are from State Senate District 2, Bob Lamb and Jeannie Forrester; State Representative District 8, Ralph Larson, Neil McIver, John Randlett, as well as Mary Cooney, Suzanne Smith, and Sid Lovett; and finally, Grafton County Commissioner District 3, Omer Ahern Jr. and Martha Richards. Each candidate will have the opportunity to introduce themselves to the audience, and there will be a question and answer period from the floor. This is an informal, bipartisan event and not a debate, and we encourage everyone from the Plymouth Newfound region to attend and to participate. And for more information or to suggest questions for the candidates, please call or email Coordinator Marcia Morris at 744-0313 or morris.marcia@gmail.com. And those are our announcements. The first item on the agenda is an update. We have with us from the New Hampshire Secretary of State, William Gardner, Bureau of Securities Regulation. We have here present Kevin Moquin, the Senior Staff Attorney. And they're going to be doing a presentation tonight. It's an historical overview of the Local Government Center and of the Bureau's regulatory oversight. This will be presented by Adrienne La Rochelle. Second, we'll have an update on the Bureau's actions against the Local Government Center with Roy Tilsley, Special Counsel. So, gentlemen, please come up and welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Barry Glennon. I'm the Director of the New Hampshire Bureau of Securities Regulation. I report to Secretary of State William Gardner. Our Bureau is responsible for regulatory oversight of pool risk management programs in the state, which includes the LGC. And you actually kind of covered all my introductory remarks. But essentially what we would like to do, first off, is to thank you for inviting us to this meeting this evening to provide information about our regulatory action. We'd like to do it in really two sections. First is to give you a general overview of the Local Government Center and its predecessor, the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and how we became involved in this matter. And then second, to provide you with a brief update with respect to the administrative action that was taken this past summer, and also provide you with an update where it is as of today, and then answer any questions that you have. And so without any further delay, I'd like to invite Attorney Adrienne La Rochelle to provide you an overview of the LGC. Thank you.
Good evening. As Director Glennon mentioned, my name is Adrienne La Rochelle. First thing I'd like to do is actually recommend maybe these board members might want to slide to the side so I could project something on the wall for you. What I'm going to do is give you an initial overview of sort of the history of 5B, or Pooled Risk Management Program, the statute and regulation, and give you a little history of the New Hampshire Municipal Association and LGC. So the New Hampshire Municipal Association was a nonprofit organization established under New Hampshire law in 1941. Its goal was to provide municipalities throughout New Hampshire with advice and counsel in terms of general function. They functioned from 1941 up through today, but in 1984, you had a single entity, New Hampshire Municipal Association, Inc., nonprofit corporation. On February 11, 1985, New Hampshire Municipal Association, Inc. developed a separate nonprofit organization called the New Hampshire Municipal Association Health Insurance Trust, Inc. The goal of this entity was to help provide municipalities with effective and cost-effective health insurance to municipal workers. The entity was established at a time in which municipalities were having difficulty obtaining insurance for their employees. On June 3rd, 1986, New Hampshire Municipal Association, Inc. developed a separate nonprofit organization called the New Hampshire Municipal Association Property Liability Insurance Trust, Inc. This was similar to the Health Insurance Trust, Inc., and the goal of this entity was to provide municipal workers and municipalities with property liability insurance at a time when it was difficult for municipalities to obtain. In 1987, RSA 5B was introduced. This statute was introduced on behalf of New Hampshire Municipal Association, and the goal of this legislation was to clarify the intent and purpose of these nonprofit corporations that were created in 1985 and 1986. The goal was to clarify how they fit into insurance regulatory structure, or if they fit into that structure at all. During the hearings that led up to the enactment of RSA 5B, the committee that was, or the Senate Insurance Committee, held a hearing in which Loomis Bergeron, who was the insurance commissioner at the time, stated, "If John Andrews took the pot and ran away with it tomorrow, there is nothing I can do about it." The reason he made this statement was because there was concern that the insurance department was going to be saddled with pooled risk management programs when they actually had no regulatory oversight of these entities. The insurance department was worried that the public would believe that the insurance department had some way of enforcing the law, when the law, in fact, didn't provide for any regulatory oversight at all. On February 5th, 1988, New Hampshire Municipal Association, Inc. developed a separate nonprofit organization. At this point, there are 4 separate nonprofit organizations. This one was called the Local Government Center, Inc. The purpose of this entity at this time was to act as a real estate holding company to help these entities, but also municipalities, hold and manage certain real estate. The entities functioned that way up until June 11th, 2003. This was a meeting of the Health Trust, which was now the name of the New Hampshire Municipal Association Health Insurance Trust, Inc. It changed its name. The Board of Trustees met, did their normal business, and then Keith Burke, who was at that time the board chair, stated, "This is our last meeting as Health Trust Board of Trustees. It has been a great group." The reason this discussion was taking place is, at this time, these 4 entities were talking about a reorganization. The goal of the reorganization was to create a structure for these entities and the 2 what were now pooled risk management programs, to give them a structure that allowed them to function effectively and efficiently, considering their relation to one another. As part of this reorganization, as I'll show you in a minute, Health Trust, Inc. and Property Liability Trust, Inc. were going to reorganize into a common structure that would be controlled by a separate parent organization, which would be the local government center. After June 11, 2003, on June 25, 2003, outside counsel for these entities informed the Corporations Division within the Secretary or the Department of State and told them about the planned reorganization. What they planned was to merge the two nonprofit organizations, you can see here on the bottom, Health Trust, Inc. and New Hampshire Municipal Association Property Liability Trust, Inc., into New Hampshire Limited Liability Companies, or LLCs. When they informed Corporations Division of this planned reorganization and actually filed the paperwork, the Corporations Division notified them that, in fact, New Hampshire law didn't allow this type of reorganization. Under New Hampshire law, nonprofit corporations can only merge with other nonprofit corporations. So the Corporations Division rejected the filings and told, in conjunction with the Attorney General, told outside counsel for New Hampshire Municipal Association that the reorganization couldn't go forward as planned. On June 26, 2003, New Hampshire Municipal Association and its related entities decided to take another tactic or another approach to the reorganization. What they did was they created, on June 26, 2003, well, they renamed NHMA Inc. to LGC Inc., or Local Government Center Inc., and LGC Inc. to LGC Real Estate Inc., which was still acting as a real estate holding company. In addition, in New Hampshire, they created 4 new entities: New Hampshire Municipal Association LLC, LGC Workers' Compensation Trust LLC, LGC Health Trust LLC, and LGC Property Liability Trust LLC. On the same day, they created 2 Delaware LLCs, LGC HT LLC, which was going to function as a shell company for the reorganization of the Health Trust pool, and LGC PLT LLC, which was to function as the same for New Hampshire Property Liability Trust, Inc. Same day, this may get a little confusing, so I'll try to explain clearly. Health Trust, Inc. filed paperwork in Delaware merging Health Trust, Inc., a New Hampshire nonprofit organization, with LGC HT LLC, a Delaware limited liability company. They did the same for the New Hampshire Municipal Association Property Liability Trust, Inc. Now you'll notice the dashed line. What they did not do was file the same paperwork in New Hampshire to notify New Hampshire that these 2 entities were in fact merging with out-of-state entities. The next day, June 27, 2003, they filed paperwork, this time in the state of New Hampshire, merging LGCHT LLC and LGC PLT LLC, the Delaware limited liability companies, with the newly created New Hampshire limited liability companies. Now you'll notice again the dashed line. On this day, they did not file the same paperwork in the state of Delaware informing Delaware of this merger. Now, because of this lack of filing in New Hampshire and in Delaware, both New Hampshire and Delaware didn't notice any actual change. Moving forward, the entities still existed, and they existed up through 2006. This was a letter in response to a letter sent out by the Secretary of State's office, the Corporations Division, informing Health Trust, Inc. and New Hampshire Municipal Association Property Liability Trust, Inc. that they needed to renew their registration. Every 5 years, nonprofit corporations in New Hampshire have to file a renewal of their registration. The Corporations Division received a letter back from Sandal Keefe, at that time LGC and now LGC's chief financial officer, stating, "Please be advised that the above company was dissolved on July 1st, 2003. Its successor, Local Government Center Health Trust LLC, has filed its annual report. Please advise if there is any other necessary information regarding this matter." Now, the reason this took place is, again, as I mentioned, the filings that needed to happen in order to effectuate a merger weren't completed. So, in 2006, New Hampshire and Delaware administratively dissolved the entities that were supposed to be used as part of this merger. In 2006, realizing that there was some issue, outside counsel for LGC revived the Delaware nonprofit organizations and filed the appropriate paperwork to merge those into New Hampshire. However, because the paperwork wasn't appropriately filed back in 2003, this essentially merged shell corporations into New Hampshire LLCs and really moved no assets and no important functions from Delaware into New Hampshire. In 2007, the LGC Workers' Compensation Trust LLC was merged into the LGC Property Liability Trust LLC so that workers' compensation and property liability insurance would be offered through the same risk pool. On August 31st, 2011, LGC, both the boards for Health Trust, Inc. and New Hampshire Municipal Association Property Liability Trust, Inc. met after 6 years of, or more than that, 8 years of no meetings, no essential board functions, and came together and voted to revive the New Hampshire nonprofit organizations that were dissolved back in 2006. They did this to essentially try to effectuate the reorganization. But at this point, let me go back one slide. This is the entity as it currently exists today, or the entities. You'll see LGC Inc., New Hampshire nonprofit organization, LGC Real Estate Inc., which is still a real estate holding company, Health Trust Inc., and NHMA Property Liability Trust Inc., which are nonprofit corporations, and then NHMA LLC, which is the municipal association arm of the entity, and then 2 LLCs, which are still today functioning as the pooled risk management programs, providing health insurance and property liability insurance and workers' compensation to cities and towns. One of the main reasons that regulation or regulatory oversight was given to the Department of State was because this is a business insurance ranking of the largest public entity risk pools in the country. This came out, obviously, in the summer of 2007, and you'll notice that Local Government Center Health Trust LLC, the health insurance pool, was actually ranked as the largest public entity risk pool in the country, with contributions yearly of nearly $316 million. Now, as regulation or regulatory oversight was given to the Department of State, the Department of State began an investigation into the function and operation of LGC and its related risk pools. As a result of this investigation, an enforcement action was instituted by the Secretary of State, which has led to the order, the most recent order, in August of this year. At this point, what I'd like to do is actually introduce Roy Tilsley, Special Counsel, to give you an overview of that order and what it means for Plymouth.
Thank you, Adrian. Good evening, board members. I'm Roy Tilsley from the Bernstein Shore Law Firm. I was one of 3 attorneys from my firm to participate in the administrative hearing involving the LGC back in May. Let me start by trying to explain why this matters. As a corporate lawyer, what they did was wrong. It was a backdoor thing, but why does it matter here in 2012? Well, back in 2003, Health Trust, Inc. and NHMA Property Liability Trust, Inc. were each separate entities. They each had their own board of directors, and that board of directors owed duties to the various cities and towns and school districts that participated in those particular pools. There was no crossover, there was no parent corporation, none of that sort of stuff. The 2003 reorganization, whether it was effective or not effective, whether it was intentional or not intentional, in terms of what the result was, the purpose of it was real simple. The purpose was to bring each of these pools under the LGC umbrella, so that each of these pools was now a subsidiary of the LGC parent. And they did that, this whole rigmarole that Adrian showed you with boxes moving around and X's and arrows, the whole thing was done to create a situation where there would be simply one board of directors. And that board of directors would be the same board for the parent, LGC, and for the two subsidiaries, the LGC Health Trust, LLC, and the LGC Property Liability Trust, LLC. And there would be one set of governing documents, bylaws, that would govern the operation of all three of those entities. What that creates, at best, is a situation where the directors on that board owe conflicting duties. They owe duties to the member cities and towns and school districts in the program, but they also owe duties to the parent, LGC, because they're on the LGC board, and it's one board for all three entities. At worst, it creates a situation where those directors owe a duty only to the parent, the LGC, and don't owe any duty to the members who are participating in the pool. What happened in 2003 is you begin to see the operations of these pools change. And what the hearings officer found in the case that I was involved with, which I'll go over in a minute, was that the pools began to be managed for the benefit of the parent, LGC, rather than for the benefit of the cities and towns and school districts that participate in those particular pools. And the two, I think, overriding concepts from the order I'm about to discuss is, number one, that concept, is that RSA 5B, which allows for the creation of these risk pools, is for the benefit of the members. And they need to be managed for the benefit of the members and not for the benefit of some other entity, some parent, or some third party. As part of that, the requirement of RSA 5B that the pools return all earnings and surplus in excess of any amounts required for administration, claims, reserves, and purchase of excess insurance is again a requirement that's for the benefit of the members, and that the pools need to be managed in a way that protects the pools but also provides for a return of any excess monies to its members, rather than the pool being managed for the benefit of the parent to grow bigger and bigger and bigger, stronger and more powerful against its competition in the marketplace. This case was tried to a hearings officer the first 2 weeks of May of this year. We received a decision from him dated August 16th, 2012, which I'm about to talk about. Just so people know where we are in terms of timelines, I think what you guys are interested in is what does it mean for the town of Plymouth, city of Plymouth, city or town? Town of Plymouth. The LGC, as required for any appeal, requested reconsideration of the order. That request was denied by the hearings officer on September 24th. He also denied their request for a stay of the provisions I'm about to talk about at the same date. There's a 30-day window from there for an appeal to the Supreme Court. We anticipate that they will file one by the October 24th due date. They will have the ability to request a stay from the Supreme Court. Doesn't mean they'll get it, but they will have a chance to request one when they file their appeal. Some of the key findings from the hearings officer, as Adrian just discussed in detail, he did find that there was an improper merger into the Delaware LLC in 2003. As Adrian discussed, they had checked with the Attorney General, they had checked with the Secretary of State, were told that they would not accept filings in New Hampshire merging a nonprofit corporation with an LLC, and they essentially tried to backdoor it by avoiding those filings, making filings in Delaware, switching things around so that when they got here, they would not have a merger of a nonprofit in an LLC. And again, what we end up with is what I just discussed. The LGC Inc. Board of Directors has complete control and dominion by fiat over what had been separately governed RSA 5B pooled risk management programs. That's from Hearing Officer Mitchell's final order. In response to that, the hearings officer has ordered that the local government center shall organize its two pooled management programs into a form that provides each program with an independent board and its own set of written bylaws. That was 90 days from his order, so by my calculations, that's due sometime in November. That would be November, by the middle of November. Now, again, they may get a stay in that, but the LGC will have to separate the board, have independent boards for each of its two remaining pools, one being the Health Trust LLC, one being the Property Liability Trust LLC. Again, if they form it differently, they still have to have independent boards with its own written set of bylaws. Another issue that the hearings officer addressed is the requirement that participants in the LGC pools must also be members in the New Hampshire Municipal Association and must pay the fee to become members in the association. For historical purposes, a lot of what's driven the growth in the surplus and some of these tactics of the LGC resulted in 2003 from competition by a rival pool called Primex, which is still around today. And at that time, when the LGC was talking about consolidating and being able to compete with Primex better, that's how they devised format, this new form of governance. One of the reasons, one of their experts at the hearing testified that one of the reasons why LGC had to compete in this way and adopt a parent subsidiary approach was to avoid a monopoly by Primex, because monopolies are scary things. The hearings officer found that what has happened since then is that the LGC now makes decisions related to its own health pooled risk management programs that are monopolistic in design. One of those decisions is the requirement of mandatory membership in the municipal association. Another decision, another monopolistic fact is the requirement that members who leave the LGC cannot come back in for 2 years. Also, the exclusive contract that the LGC has with Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, which prevents Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield from offering its health plans to any municipalities in the state with over 50 employees, with 2 pre-existing exceptions to that. Therefore, the hearings officer ordered in his decision that the local government center's risk pools may not require participating members to join or participate in any organization that requires the payment of dues for membership in said organization. Moving on to the dollars and cents of all of this. The surplus to be returned as ordered by the hearings officer. Here we have essentially the history of the surplus that has been retained by the Health Trust LLC since the 2003 consolidation. If you look at the right-hand column, you'll see the total net assets, the total surplus. They started with 24 million, almost 25 million in 2003. They, at times, or more than tripled that between 2003 and 2010 to reach, in 2010, a net assets surplus reserves, as LGC calls it, of $86,782,000. Keep in mind, this is not money that's designated for claims. That's a separate line item. This is money that's designated as reserves by the LGC. Kevin, if I get it wrong, you'll kick me in the shin. We have our CPA here, so if I do something wrong, he'll tell me. We have, first of all, on the left, the board designated column. This is an amount that the board has set as a designated amount of reserves. You can see in 2006 they began designating a certain amount that went into the left-hand column. The right-hand column is undesignated. This is literally extra money. I believe the former executive director, Mr. Andrews, called it excess. This is money beyond what they were hoping to have. And for many years, it went into the undesignated account. Interestingly enough, in 2009, when the Bureau of Securities Regulation received enforcement powers through the statute, you'll note that the undesignated amount was eliminated and some of the money was moved over to board designated. The end game is we go in the course of 7 years as a result of this reorganization from 25 million in reserves to 86, almost $87 million in reserves. Again, this is under the parent subsidiary model where we believe that there are incentives to protect, to work for the parent as opposed to working for the members. This is a portion of the hearings officer's order, which I think is consistent with what I just discussed, that under the parent subsidiary model, the amount increased by approximately 350% from 2003 to 2010. This is the quote I just mentioned. The undesignated amounts were called free excess. That's not an accounting term. There's no accounting term of free excess. This was literally just extra money that they kept in the LGC Health Trust LLC. They did not return it to the members as required by the statute. This is a hard one to explain, but again, as an indication of what happens when the board of directors is looking out for the parent as opposed to the members, the hearings officer included a discussion of RBC ratio. I'm not going to tell you what an RBC ratio or how it's calculated. I'll tell you that it's a ratio that is used in the insurance industry to calculate reserve amounts. And you do the equation, and RBC had set as its designated reserve an RBC of 4.2. That's a calculation that, what those people call? Actuaries, sorry, it slipped my mind. That's a calculation that actuaries perform to determine reserve levels. LGC had decided that they wanted an RBC of 4.2. In a subsequent year, they arbitrarily increased that to 4.7. Not because they had an actuary do a calculation that said you should be at 4.7. That's the right number for you based on the amount of money you have and based on the risk and this and that, but because the LGC thought they could use some extra money to maybe buy some equipment and other things they might need in the future, and they would just bump the RBC up a bit to get some extra money into the till. That's not how that formula is supposed to work. The hearings officer took him to task on this arbitrary increase in the RBC and noted that the insult to the members of the program is that money that you folks could have used for your own equipment, your own technology, your own purposes, couldn't stay here but went to the LGC so that they could use it for their own purposes that they wanted to use it for. As a result, the hearings officer has ordered that the LGC return the LGC Health Trust return $33.2 million to its members. The calculation is 15% of claims as an appropriate amount of reserves. This still leaves the LGC Health Trust LLC with about $50 million of reserves. This amount will be returned to members of that program in proportion to each member's contributions to that standing amount of earnings in surplus. Similarly, on the Property Liability Trust LLC, there was a similar order to return $3.1 million of surplus in cash to members who participated in the local government center's property and liability risk pool as of June 14, 2010. The hearings officer on both of those amounts has ordered the Bureau to negotiate with the LGC to attempt to agree on how amounts will be returned. The LGC to date has not been willing to negotiate with us, appears to be taking the position that they expect to get a stay from the Supreme Court and do not want to attempt to implement this order at this particular time. We have filed, and I won't get into the nitty-gritty, but it's on the Bureau's website. We have filed a report with the hearings officer detailing how we would like him to implement his order because we believe that he still has the right and ability to do that until a stay is granted, which hasn't happened yet. We have proposed that the money can be returned to cities and towns either through rate credits, rate holidays, or that cities and towns would have the right to request a cash refund, but could get no more cash than their annual premium in 2010 for any given year. The exact mechanism of how money will come back to cities and towns and when it will come back is obviously subject to appeal. If this decision changes, that could change. But even if upheld in appeal, the exact mechanism is not yet determined. We are attempting to get an order from the hearings officer to address that. We'll have to see where it goes in the process. But that's the order, and that's where we stand in terms of the refund of those monies. Okay, Adrian, I'm stuck here. I know I got more. There we go. Okay, the next topic the hearings officer addressed improper workers' compensation subsidy. And in terms of history, as part of the competition with Primex that resulted in this 2003 reorganization, the LGC made a determination to get into the business of offering workers' compensation coverage to cities and towns. And they funded that initially with startup funds from each of the two other pools, the health pool and the property liability pool. In addition, since starting the workers' compensation trust, they have funded losses in the workers' compensation pool by a so-called strategic planning fee, which has increased everybody's premiums in the other two pools, and which diverts money to workers' comp to cover workers' comp's losses. Obviously, while there is some overlap between cities and towns that participate in the workers' comp pools, not those cities and towns in the health trust or the property liability trust are participating in the workers' comp pool. Yet all of those cities and towns have funded the workers' comp pool since it's been in existence. And the hearings officer, this is the amount that each of the other pools contributed to the LGC, which then LGC used most of that money to fund the workers' compensation program. The hearings officer found that there had been a subsidy of $18.3 million of the workers' compensation pool, that is money that could have been returned to members of the health trust and members of the property liability program as surplus, and he has ordered that that money be repaid to the other two pools and returned to members as appropriate, using the same type of returns that I just discussed with the $33 million and I think the $3.1 million. Here's the order on that. Those $17.1 million subsidy will be repaid, and those amounts will be returned to members to the extent they constitute amounts in excess of the earnings and surplus of the local government center health trust. 17.1 is the amount that the health trust has contributed to workers' comp. I said 18.3, the 1.2 is property liability trust, which is now merged with workers' comp prior to the hearing. There was a finding that the LGC's current executive director was not individually liable for the violations under RSA 5B. There was also a finding that the one remaining board member who did not settle with us, Peter Curo, was not individually liable for his actions under RSA 5B. And much to my chagrin, because this was the part of the case that I presented, there was also a finding that the LGC risk pool contracts do not constitute securities. Basically, based on the hearings officer's determination that the motivation in purchasing these contracts is not the potential for profits in terms of a return of surplus, but a desire to consume the product purchased. There's a lot of case, I won't defend my position on this, but there's a lot of case law dealing with similar types of insurance contracts. The Bureau's concern coming into this case was that the scope of its authority under RSA 5B was not clear. And if it didn't have authority under RSA 5B, then this likely was a security. These other cases often say that if there's another regulatory authority, then, for example, a mutual insurance policy is not a security because it's regulated by an insurance commissioner. Here, since we have affirmed with the hearings officer that the Bureau has regulatory authority under 5B, losing on the securities issue hurts a little bit less because we have accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, which was to make sure that somebody is regulating these 5B pools and that they are not operating independent of any regulation. I'm stuck again. So I'm almost done, so I'm just going to move on from here. There we go. In summary, the LGC, pending a stay from the Supreme Court, if they request one and if the court grants it, is required to reorganize within 90 days of the August decision. It's required to discontinue the membership requirement in the NHMA. The Health Trust LLC has to return $33.2 million to its members. The Property and Casualty LLC has to return $3.1 million to its members. The Workers' Compensation subsidy by the Health Trust LLC of $17.1 million needs to be returned to Health Trust and then returned to members as appropriate. And finally, I haven't discussed this yet, but another issue was that the campus in Concord, which the LGC operates at, which is worth at least several $1 million, was originally owned by the two trusts. And the two trusts had previously transferred it to the LGC parent for free. And the hearings officer found that that was improper, that those were trust assets, ultimately trust assets for the benefit of the members, and it's ordered that the ownership of the real estate be restored to the pools as it was before the transfer was made. Anyone has any questions or comments, we're all here, we're happy to take them. If anybody wants to read the final order, it's a long order, but it reads quick. The site is right there. You can go to the Bureau's website and find it. If you want to see a video of the hearing or read the transcript, and the video is scintillating, you'll especially want to see me in action on day 9. The site is right there, and feel free, it's all up if anybody wants to take a look at it. Thank you, and if there's any questions, we're happy to try to address them for you.
Questions from the board members? No? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about this.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice work.
Just push the lower in.
Gentlemen, while we appreciate your coming up, you don't feel under any obligation to stay for the remainder of our meeting. I know you've got busy lives as well, but thank you very much. And do we have any questions just quickly before?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the prime sponsor of the bill that created the process here, I want to thank the Bureau and everything that you've done to bring this about. I think it might be helpful to the board for counsel for the department to talk about the legal fees and the appellate process. We had a similar hearing in Warren. The Secretary of State was there, Andy Valinsky was there. And my understanding is that the legal fees to date on the LGC side, and I think there were, I don't know how many lawyers there were there, but approximately 9 or 10 of the major firms in the state. And I think their side of the equation was approximately $1 million, 1.9. In addition to that, Attorney Valinsky's firm also billed approximately $500,000. And the reason I think that's relevant is because at the end of the day, after we listen to this complicated story, these are all taxpayers' dollars, and the entire intent of the legislation that we proposed, that we were I was the prime sponsor of, was to simply do what the law requires, which is to return the excess reserves to the owners of those funds, the cities and towns and the school districts. And so one of the things that, quite frankly, as a taxpayer in the town of Plymouth tonight, I'm very concerned about is that instead of negotiating with the Bureau, instead of stopping the process, which they certainly can do, we're hearing that there's going to be an appeal. And I think it would be incumbent upon us as taxpayers to perhaps contact the LGC and urge them to sit down and negotiate with the Bureau. The Bureau has repeatedly tried to do that, and restore the funds that are owned by the taxpayers in this state. And it affects every town practically in the state, every one of us who are taxpayers. So I would urge folks to consider contacting the local government center, contact Nora Carroll, ask them to stop the appeal. This is about a fairly simple statute. It simply says the excess reserves has to be returned to the cities and towns. It's not a complicated scheme, and this is not to say that the local government center does not do a lot of good in terms of offering our towns support, information. They also charge a fee for that. However, I just want to say publicly, I want to thank the Bureau for everything you've done, and I think this is simply about returning taxpayer funds to the taxpayers. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
If I could just address that briefly.
Certainly.
The LGC released a press release today that they're in it right now for $1.9 million. We have submitted a fee request for $570,000 for the Bureau's fees in this, so they're way over ours. LGC has 2 competitors in this business, Primex and School Care. We settled with both of them in a matter of weeks at a much smaller expense, as you can imagine. So there certainly is, I think, a willingness on the Bureau's part to try to get something done and end this battle And we'd be happy to have that discussion with them if you can put the proper pressure on them to come talk to us.
Thank you very much. And I think that the taxpayers in our town who have looked at the town's budget, I think one of the things that it really takes people's breaths away is what we're paying in premiums for insurance for our town employees. And, you know, if we could even get them to say, yes, we want to go with a rate reduction or a rate forgiveness for X number of years to pay the money back that's ultimately calculated to be owed to Plymouth, you know, it would make a difference for our budget. So, you know, I certainly thank you, Deb, for that suggestion. And Paul?
I was just going to mention that. Has it been defined that if they make a return, it will be monetarily? Or could it be, as Val just stated, a reduction in cost going forward?
The Health Officer's order provides an ability for the Bureau to negotiate with the LGC and suggests that either rate credits or rate holidays are possible ways to return money, but also provides, I'm not sure if this is in addition to, it provides that a city or town can request cash refund back from the LGC. The refund in 1 year cannot exceed the amount of the 2010 premium. So there is an ability to request the cash back. What I'm hesitating on is I don't know if that's, I'll look at it, I can email you. I'm not positive that that's something that he is suggesting that we negotiate and saying if we don't agree on something, this will be it, or if he's saying this option will always be out there. But I can let you know. I'm guessing you're the town manager. Yeah. Okay, I'll email you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, again, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
We'll be just a second to remove the equipment. Just first, 1 second. Thank you.
You need help? Need help with me?
Oh, well said. I'm not going to take down your audio system. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, folks.
Moving on, we have new purchase orders from the Highway Department. Paul, do you want to speak to this since Peter's not here?
Peter had come before the board when he was going to purchase asphalt for doing Moss Road. And then he said that he also has some other side roads and some other projects to get the asphalt, but Moss Road was completed and now he's asking for additional asphalt paving to be done both on a sidewalk repair that he has and one road repair that he has. There actually might be a couple of road repairs. But it was negotiated at that time at the same rate. And Bryant Paving was the low bidder.
So on the original of this, the sidewalk repairs that are highlighted are the Legion sidewalk, the Rite Aid sidewalk, the Langdon Street sidewalk, and the School Road sidewalk. On the original of it that I've got here, the signature copy.
Yes.
So That would be the $625 for the Legion sidewalk, $875 for the Rite Aid sidewalk, $5,625 at Langdon Street, and $2,500 at School Road, for a total of $9,625.
Now, can I ask, why are all these other things here? Were these things that we wanted to do?
This was,
Or what are the things that were not, the items that are on here that were not?
I think, doesn't the sidewalk money have to come out of a separate?
He has two separate
He
ones.
has different line
There's
numbers.
a sidewalk line and
Yeah. But I'm just, why is, for example, the Toby Road, there's other things on here that were not?
They're on the road repair one as things that are being...
On page 2 of each one, you'll find the answer to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I understand.
Except for the cameras.
Right.
Gotcha.
Madam Chair, do we need a motion on each one of these, or can we do a motion for both?
I think we can do,
you can approve both of them.
we can approve both at once.
Madam Chair, I'll move that we approve both purchase orders that come to a total of $22,885 with Bryan Paving for the work that's been detailed in front of us on the various streets that you've already spoken to.
Second.
It's been moved by Ray and seconded by Charlie that we approve these purchase orders. The first being the sidewalks for $9,625, the second being road repair for a total of $13,260 to give us the total that Ray cited. Is there any discussion or question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Those purchase orders are approved. And we can sign those, but move on to committee reports. Charlie?
I have nothing.
Ray?
I attended, on behalf of Mike, the Energy Commission meeting of 2 weeks ago, and the principal item on their agenda was an update on the work that we've approved to move forward with the first phase of converting the high-pressure sodium lights to LEDs, and we responded to a lot of the questions they had, and the feeling from amongst the commission members that they were glad to see that we were moving forward with that proposal.
Conservation Commission meeting, met a couple weeks ago. They had some discussions about their fall trail work, including trail repairs, signage, and I did take those two issues to the chair and the planning board rep to the Conservation Commission, or vice versa. I'm okay with that. I'll bring that with them.
What? Okay. And I have attended both the Campus Community Council meeting and the PSU Task Force meeting. Both of those, the consensus was that the university has gotten off to a very smooth start with the fall semester. I think people need to be aware that the university is going to great lengths to make students aware of what the laws are in the town. They've put out information handouts about the town noise ordinance. They've put out a pamphlet about responsible drinking, and they've put out another one that's kind of the title of it is "What Would Mr. Rogers Do?" and it's talking about students living in our neighborhoods and getting along with their neighbors. So it's in addition to this, the university administration has actually been going door to door to student housing, working with the landlords, and really taking a proactive role in trying to make things go more quietly and smoothly for all of our residents. So it appears to be working. And that was all I had. Paul, did you have anything else that...
I have a question for Ray. Utility poles. Right now that we lost one of our poles out here to an accident last week.
Mm-hmm.
Wondering, and it completely destroyed, we have to replace it. But after the insurance company handles their part of it, is it possible now to try one of those lights that you were talking about, instead of replacing it with It's in a good spot, it's out by the doorway.
Yeah, I saw the
It wouldn't be,
remnants of the
I think it
parking.
would be that out of line, it won't match the other ones, would it?
I think it would be useful
Try it out.
to explore that, especially since the university in the past 2 weeks also has put into play an LED fixture behind Lamson Library, where they've retrofitted one of the existing high-pressure sodiums with an LED conversion kit to see how the light is going to look. And certainly, we're going to have to replace the pole, but let me talk with the gentleman who's heading up the university's investigation and see if it's possible for us to actually put a test installation in right there. It's not too far away from the LEDs that we just did on Main Street at the common
We
areas.
weren't planning on it, but now that we're missing one.
I think it's an opportunity to take a good hard look at it, and it would be great for show and tell. I'll get back to you.
How did it disappear? Was it a mad taxpayer or somebody coming out of town hall?
We can talk about that after the meeting, Charlie. All right. Do we have any comment from our public? There being none, I would request a motion to go into non-public session in accordance with RSA 91-A:3, comma 2, parentheses D, real estate.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Mike and seconded by Dick. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. We are in non. Thank you very much.